Hey, Mike, thanks so much for joining me today and looking forward to record a session of Beyond the Usual podcast with you. Um, Mike, you and I have known each other about 6 years or
6 years,
worked
yeah.
together closely. You've been at different brands, Cardinal. You've been a lender with Cardinal, Fairway, and also done a lot on the SaaS side with Velocify, Shape, and now with Active Prospect. So you've sold, you've put on the sales hat,
Yep.
you've done
Yep.
upselling, implementation, all things API, and then also price negotiations as a lender. So
Right.
quite a few experiences there.
Yeah. Over the years, the best way I like to explain myself professionally is I'm kind of like a Swiss Army knife. I basically, I've done marketing, I've done lead generation, I've done sales, I've done consulting work for large companies. And I think inherently that's really benefited me because it allows me to kind of see you know, it allows me to kind of approach my work from a different perspective than I think people who don't have those experiences. So it's been very beneficial to me.
One of the great things about knowing someone for all this time is you see their professional and personal success and family growth and
Right.
all that. So it's been pleasure. I think first time when we spoke, she was a toddler and now she is six, seven,
She's
six.
9.
She's 9. Okay, there you go.
Oh
I
my
lost my
goodness.
count. I remember 6, 7,
Yep.
but then we lost track. Okay, she's
Yep.
9. Okay,
Yep.
I always keep asking you, is she at a place where she's like, Dad, you don't understand anything?
Oh, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's like when they're younger, when they're like 5 or 6, they just everything they take it's all face value, right? They're like, oh, cool. Daddy said that it's good. Mommy says that
Daddy's,
it's
yeah.
good. They listen all the time. I'm not seeing as much of like the preteen attitude, I would say, where they talk back. Sometimes I'm getting an occasional question now, but not, I don't think I've ever had a situation where I was like, did she just say that to me? Or something of that nature. She's a very, very good girl. So
That is nice. But for any reason, if that door slams on you, do text me that day.
oh boy. It's Aru, it's funny that you mentioned that. So I'm extremely stubborn and my wife is extremely stubborn. So you can imagine what
She's
a
watching y'all.
yeah, exactly. So I'm sure the storm is coming, but I always I'm enjoying the times now, and there's also things in the future that I think, there will be a lot of things that I can help her with. So,
This is one of the nice moments too, right? Like I'm pretty sure you're stubborn, so am I. So it's just the
yeah.
strong personalities that sometimes parents bring, and you're wondering, why is my child stubborn? Well, they are
Yeah,
watching someone, I guess.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
there's times where she will do something and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly something that I would do, at that age. And it's just so interesting to see her progress and, evolve over time. So,
Yeah, you have to be 2 steps ahead of what she might do, but and then
right,
lose track. So,
right.
all right. So we'll start the session, and I have 3 questions for you. We'll just take turns.
Okay.
I'll start with my first question for you. You have worked in the CRMs and contact center now for over a decade.
Hmm.
Is there a strategy that you saw work and you were like, oh, I wasn't confident, and you were surprised by how well it worked?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So when I first started at Velocify, at the time it was actually Leads 360. Um, I came from a contact center that practiced what was called the lead ownership model, which is basically where when a lead comes into your CRM system, it's assigned to a user, and then that user is the one or salesperson who owns that lead until perpetuity. Um, I was exposed to several large enterprise clients that practice what was called the shared lead model. And particularly the shared lead model with what was called the get lead distribution method, which is a get lead button within the CRM system. And when I was told about this strategy in the beginning, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, meaning that I was like, how would this even work? But I knew that it must work because some of these larger shops are practicing
Using it.
this. And so, over time, as I saw more and more companies use it, and even introduced some companies to the methodology of using the shared lead model. I really, really grew to be a big fan of it. And for those of you who obviously aren't familiar with the shared lead model, it's where when a lead comes into your system, it is immediately distributed to a sales rep, but then follow-up calls are done through automatic distribution methods by potentially that sales rep or other sales reps. So basically all the sales team is working that record until perpetuity. So that one I would say is probably what surprised me the most, because in the beginning, when I first started at Leads 360 / Philosophy, wasn't as confident that it would work, but I've seen it and it executes really, really well.
Yeah, and just taking some of my personal notes back on that mention, I remember early days, it was very nerve-wracking when we'd get a support ticket saying, it was my lead and XYZ took it. What
Right.
happened? And for the first 2, 3 years, we were like, okay, no one takes anyone's leads. Just keep. And this was pre-COVID, right? The rates
Mm-hmm.
were low.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was happy. No,
Right.
no one wanted their leads taken away.
Right.
And it was from there we got into COVID, and now it was like, doesn't matter. We are all a team. End of the day, the customer needs to get, so we changed so many of our models to say, if they don't get a response within 5 minutes and they are in this phase, find someone else.
That's exactly
So,
right.
and whatever the backend distribution is, the bips get divided or things of that sort.
Sure.
Closing more leads as a team definitely brought in more value than just holding it and hoping that one person is going to close it.
Yeah, and inherently, one of the things that is really probably one of the best business cases for using the shared lead model is that over a lead ownership model is that if you assign a lead to a person, you are basically hoping that that individual is going to consistently follow up on that contact strategy and not have any distractions. So I'll give you a good example. Let's say I give a lead to an individual. They may call the lead right away, right? The first call, the first text, email, etc. But let's say you want them to be called an hour later. But an hour later, this individual
Is
has
at
to, they
lunch
go and
or
they
yeah,
take lunch, or, something happens, right? Having a team of people sharing that record to be able to call them allows you to basically adhere to your contact strategy. Um, and what a lot of companies typically practice with the shared lead model is that the leads, when they when they come in, basically until that lead is contacted or an application, it basically stays in buckets of leads that everybody shares together. But then once it becomes like an application or it's contacted, then it becomes
a
owned by that
sticky,
individual,
yeah,
and it's their job to convert it from there. Because obviously, like if you have a sales rep who schedules an appointment with somebody, you don't want somebody calling them 15 minutes later, trying
trying to
to
grab it away. Yeah,
exactly, or takes an
absolutely.
application with them. You want that person to be responsible for, if they speak to this individual, to be able to close them and move them past the finish line.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take your question.
All right. So really, Aru, over the last year, you've obviously heard a lot of chatter about AI. There's been a lot of solutions that have come out. Obviously, the biggest one is ChatGPT. Um, I really feel like we're kind of in the early stages of AI from both tech and even other industries as well. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think are some future use cases for AI within the chat channel? What would you like to see? What do you think what do you think is coming, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. Goes back to why I started the company with the name bot in there. But again, too early for the times. No one wanted to hear bot, and here we
Yeah.
are. It's flooding now. In my view, and I repeat this multiple times, if you have ample amount of data, if you have process in place that is repeatable, and you have certain aspects where you can monitor and look at the outliers, then you
Mhm.
can automate and use AI for that process. And the reason I'm saying that would be if you're looking at sale, like top of the funnel sale, the LOs are having the same kind of conversation. Where are you? Do you have co-borrower? How would you do your down payments and things of that sort? But if as a brand, you have the questions that are asked in place and you have relative responses, let's say, for example, someone asks like, how would you do down payment? And the customer is like, I don't know what down payment means. Engage them, educate them about it. So if you
Mhm.
have information to ask the right questions, and if you have the backup information to educate them about those questions, you are almost there to start automation. So most of the use cases I'm seeing are going to be around pre-qualification. Like no one wants to talk unless they are the right person to talk to.
Right.
So pre-qualifying them at least to a level where it feels like this is high intent, let me get you an agent. Or
Mhm.
you are high intent 6 months from now, let me just keep educating you, like give your information, we'll keep dripping you things that to
Y-
educate you. Yeah. And the other most important use case I'm seeing is probably post closing. If they have like servicing questions, any kind of
Mm.
things that are tax document related, payment related, or refinancing, things of that sort. I think those two are most, at least in the industries like insurance and high
Yeah.
value mortgage and all, right, or buying a car.
Yeah.
Outside of that, a lot I would say would be towards marketing. Like we ourselves use chat gpt so much, like we'll upload some of our marketing materials, testimonials, pdfs, and look for ideas to come from
That's
it.
right.
So
To your point, now you're starting to see like a lot of white papers that come out. You see posts even on LinkedIn about it where they say like, hey, a lot of people use ChatGPT as almost like a search tool to start.
yes,
They're like, hey, like what is this? Kind of like what they do with Google today. But now you're starting to see, I would say, more of the education around the use cases of AI, where it's like, hey, you ask the AI to come up with marketing material like, hey, can you generate like a five email template campaign that talks about this topic, and you can even prompt it to do it in a friendly tone. You
yes,
can give it resources to look at, and it's really starting to enhance the AI market, and as well as the marketing marketing departments that are out there. There's even some things that are coming from a code perspective. So we're starting to see certain AI tools that are able to build and develop their own code.
yeah,
You prompt it to do something and it will actually write the code for you. I think there's a lot of capabilities in that in the future. And within the chat space as well, I think AI can be used for things like QCing chat conversations.
yes,
Like,
yeah.
think about it from like a compliance perspective, right? So I think all that stuff is really, really great points, Aru.
Those, and I think just to stress, right, it's not going to come up with business plans or business pivotal points for the business. That's where humans have to concentrate. If you don't have experience working in a business, you're not going to know how to use AI. But
Right.
if you have an idea and you want to execute it, it's possible that rather than taking 6 months to implement, you can get the requirements done in 2 days instead of 2 weeks. So you
That's
could
right.
probably cut down the execution time. And as they always say, right, if your execution or your plan is bad, you're going to fail. Why not just fail fast, pivot from there, and move on to something else?
Right. Right.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
All
So
right. Your
I'm
next
ready for your
question.
question.
So you've been pretty active in the last few weeks on LinkedIn, and I'm loving how you're mixing like personal experiences and post and like your career based experiences and things of. So one of the posts was around you coaching your daughter on like, or spending more time with her, being a
Yeah,
coach there. So what are some of the things that you're doing to spend more time, and give a little bit of the background of what made you feel? Is it she turning
sure.
9 and bonding with her more now, or give us a little
Yeah.
background of what was drove it? Yeah.
Well, yeah. So basically, over the years, I I've been a very, very busy individual in, both the financial services and CRM/contact center space. I have worked, I would often work sometimes Sunday all the way through Saturday, 8 to 10 hours a day. And I did that because I think it's just inherently in the way that I'm built from a personal perspective. I have a lot of drive. I really want to try and get things done and, do it as good as I can. Um, and I do this, I've been doing this over these years, and I realized it really hit me one day. There was a post by Scott Payne where he talked about being able to spend time with his son. And when I read it, I don't know what it was. It actually just hit me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been working all these years, and I've been missing out on the time with my daughter. And it really brought in some personal reflection for me, because I had to really sit down and analyze, like, okay, what am I doing now that it is causing me to not be able to spend time with my daughter and my family? And one of them was obviously, work related, not setting the appropriate boundaries. And the other things was, I often was spending quite a bit of time on my phone. So, like, I would get done with work, I would spend time on my phone. Sometimes I was listening to, either listening to things on like Facebook or YouTube, whatever, responding to emails, text messages, phone calls, whatever. So, so I really, after determining what those things were, I basically made a plan on how I can spend more time with her. So one of the things that I did was I started coaching, and what coaching allowed me to do was, A, I was able to spend time with her. B, I was allowed to spend some time in the community. So I started making more friends. And C, it got me more outside. So, I find when I'm having worked from home for so long that I'm so comfortable with, like, oh, let me just go to my computer. I can do some work real quick. But like when I get outside of the house, now I have the opportunity to spend time with my daughter. We can go places after we're done with coaching, things like that. Some other things that I've done is I've really focused on time management within my calendar for work. So I will actually segment out times on my calendar for lunch. I have times that are blocked off for work. So, a lot of times people they get stuck on, well, if there's empty places in your calendar, you're not doing work. But that's not true. What happens is that you are doing work, sometimes from other meetings or project related work, right? So they think that they have to have a full calendar in order to, be doing a good job. And that's just simply not the case. So blocking those off helps. It gave me more time to actually finish my day-to-day tasks within my work environment. Other things that I've done, kind of off topic of this, is I have started working out later in the evening. So I've made a point to work out for 30 days straight. I'm on day 22 right now. And
Yeah.
what's been interesting for me with that was, I find that when I get done with working out, that I do sleep better. And so what I was when I was going through and reviewing this, I was like, okay, well, what was I doing before? Well, I would get done, I'd be drinking a lot of coffee throughout the day.
On the
I'd be
phone.
work Yeah, I'd be on the phone, right? I would be constantly working. And then when I would get to bed, I would also be on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like my mind never had a chance to shut down, but
Yeah.
that inherently made it where I wasn't sleeping as well. And then because I wasn't sleeping as well, I wasn't as focused on my tasks the
And the
following day.
crankiness just adds up.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And, it's kind of a vicious cycle. So that has really helped me. But, it really upset me when I
You
realized that
found
I
it,
wasn't.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, when I really sat down and thought about it, the whole thing really upset me. But I'm making a really, really good point to spend as much time with her as I can now.
Amazing.
So.
I can see some similarities, right? And like with the phone, like same thing. Now you might have seen. I don't message you or text you much as I would have probably 2 years, 3 years ago,
Yep.
because those are certain realizations. I'm like, I could be saying hello to everybody in the world and
Right.
keeping that relationship and just
Right.
missing what's right beside me. So
Yeah.
I try best to leave my phone in the car if we are going out to eat or doing like a picnic or visiting a
Yep.
temple, whatever it is. Or like, I made time to drive here, or even shopping sometimes. If I don't need it, just put it away.
Right.
And at home, Fridays to Sundays, I try to just drop it, to the point that Monday mornings, I'm like, where's my phone? Why isn't it charged? Why can't
That's
find
right.
it? Again,
Yeah.
there's the other point that you mentioned about, I think it's something in us, we enjoy work. I don't know how to define it
Yeah.
either, but through my experience, weekdays I cannot have lunch without working. It's just one of those habits I've gotten into.
Yeah.
If I'm not, and when I say, it's not like I'm watching a video and eating, it's got to be work. I've got to like eat 2 spoons, type something.
Hmm.
It's, I don't know. I will
I do
skip
that
work
sometimes too.
if I don't have work. I may skip lunch, but I need that work to get through my lunch. It's just yeah.
Sometimes, what's really helped me too to kind of, unplug from work is that I will, like, let's say I'm at lunch. If I find myself looking at my phone, sometimes I'll listen to a podcast. And then so it's not necessarily work
It's there,
related,
but
but
it's not. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. So, I'll be eating and then I'll be listening to podcasts or whatever it may be. But I do the same thing when I'm at the gym too. I will listen to podcasts a lot and it just helps me to kind of zone out, and kind of take my mind off of, what I'm doing for work. And then when it's time for work, I'm more focused on work and I
Yes.
get more stuff done.
Yep. Absolutely. All right.
All right. This question for you. So it's funny, it's kind of a good segue into what we were just talking about. So I've been having a lot of conversations recently with friends and family members about the impacts of social media on our children. And the conversation centered around if, we really thought that like certain social media channels like the TikTok and the Facebook are good or bad for them developmentally. So do you think really that social media channels like TikTok and Facebook are good or bad for kids?
Um, I've heard so many arguments of it. Personally, at least you and I have experienced that once our eyes are on the screen, we cannot think of things around us.
Mhm.
Being adults, being parents who should be setting up good examples, feel guilty about having been stuck with it. So I think that itself says a lot that it is not good. Um, but on
Yeah,
the other side, if it was regulated and if it was giving the content that was healthy and helped us be better, like mindfulness or things of that sort, like
mhm,
when you say podcast, right? There's a difference between what it is you're seeing versus how that what you're seeing impacts your brain and your takeaways, right? So I
that's
think
right.
if the content was different other than just making it, let me scroll the next, let me see how
That's
people are
right.
cooking ice, like why did we need to see and give a smirk when I could have a
That's
real
right.
actual joke with
Yeah.
with a human being around me,
That's
right?
right.
So it's very disturbing, I would say. And interestingly, I just heard about this on the radio this morning, and I was looking up this book, The Anxious Generation. I'm probably going to buy it. I depend on library a lot because I'm like, let
Mhm,
me get it from the library. If I like it, I'll purchase a copy. And I
mhm.
don't know if you can see it, but
I can, yep.
just just look at the number of people that are holding it. It's like 51 copies and 200 people are on hold.
Mhm.
It's so I would hate to take any kind of digital and social media access away from my 12-year-old, because I don't know what next 10 years brings. I don't want her to be at a place where it's like, I have this gap and now I'm inefficient because you didn't let me get
That's
exposed to
right.
it. It's like AI, right? Like people, when internet came in, people might have said, oh, this is just a fad, it's going to go away in 2 years, we are not going to
Mhm.
upgrade and have a digital shop. Well, if you didn't have digital shop, you probably don't even have a physical shop anymore.
That's
It's
right.
those kind of things. But um it's a double-edged sword with my 12-year-old. they her elementary kind of middle went through COVID time, so they had to use technologies. Even right now, some
Mhm.
of their lessons are online.
Yep.
And my husband and I didn't do a great job in keeping things away from her. So we've shown her what an incognito mode is. So she knows how to
Mhm.
escape things. And now
That's
we are
right.
like, we were helping her
Yep.
and teaching her, thinking that will be useful, but as any child, they are going to use it in their favor. So we are bringing our experiences back and saying, now we have like a tablet that the whole home uses to listen to podcasts or music. So it's like, if you're
Yeah.
listening to something, it's got to be on the speaker. If you're watching something, it's got to be with everyone around. We're trying. Does it work every time? Probably not, but
Yeah.
um, she's aware of things that should not be gone for, or you have the firewalls and all that in place. But positive impact, probably not. More negative based on the content that's being distributed today.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know, a lot of my friends and family, when we talked about it, one of the things that we considered a negative about it was how it was affecting, especially TikTok in particular, how it was affecting kids' attention spans. So they would, you know, they no longer have, not that they don't have it, but what TikTok naturally does is it makes it where you don't focus on one subject for a very long period of time. Whereas, like, you know, if you're reading a book, it's an entire book, it's a very long process, right?
Yes.
And so it's kind of affecting some of their cognitive abilities to be able to pay attention in class. And things of that nature. I think you made a really, really good point, though, as well as on the content that's there, because some of the content that's on TikTok, there is some good content on there, depending on who you're following. But a lot of times people get stuck in what I call the doom scroll, where they're just sitting there, they listen to the video, and they're like, okay, let me do another video,
Yeah.
let me do another video. And then you're 2 hours into it, and you don't even realize that you've been watching videos for 2 hours just because of how short they are and what they're doing. Um, some family members have flat out banned it after certain hours of days where they say, hey, you know, you get home, you get 1 hour of screen time and
Yes. Yep.
that's it. I've seen others that have told their kids that, like, if you are going to be on the screen, you could only be on it for like 30, 45 minutes at a
Something
time,
of
and you
that sort.
have
Yeah.
to take a break before you do it. But it's been very interesting to see how, you know, really parents are starting to pay more attention to this and determining like what is really the best use case for it, for that particular tool. But, you know, another good point you made is that there's going to be things, you know, we already see it today in marketing where social media is used and
And
they're
we've
going to need to be
we've
familiar
seen
with it.
it with, in like, you'd question, right, is being like, she's asked me this: if I can be a successful influencer, why should I study? If it is a genuine
Yeah.
point, like if next 10 years are going to be for influencers, what's the worth of one studying, taking the student loans and all those things? As a parent, you can give them a reasonable response, but you also wonder how much of your response is true to the changing world. So yeah.
Well, I mean, social media influencers, depending on what they're doing, some of them are doing it for, you know, business development, right? You know, they will post online, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, et cetera, and they're trying to generate leads or really kind of market their brand. Others are true, what I would consider, they're almost like advertisers. They're like, you
Yeah.
know, the equivalent to like a TV advertisement where they're getting paid to market a product for a company. So it's basically taking it from a television and just putting it onto your phone in this through a social media channel. So
Yeah,
that
I think,
was
and in the end, it's like, don't shy away, know where it fits,
right,
and but have a strong backup so that you know to make the right choices.
right.
So yeah, but we don't have access to any social media. I don't use Instagram and things of that sort. LinkedIn probably is the only thing. She clearly has no access or any social media accounts. I don't think
Mhm.
knowing her, I don't think she'd be interested in it either. And to your point, fortunately, we got her reading very early, like around 3 or 4, and she still
Right,
physically loves physical books rather than anything online. So, yeah.
right.
All
All
right.
right. Ready for
Yeah,
question
last question.
3.
So, COVID has hit us in many different ways. Some of us have picked up skills that we didn't know we had, or folks have lost weight, gained weight, so many different things. Um, how did it affect you personally and in professional manner? Even though you are always work from home, was there a change when COVID hit to your professional areas? And following that up with another question, you did like home remodeling or purchased a new
Yeah.
home, moved states. How was that experience and what got you into it?
Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot to decompile there. So let's start off with how did COVID affect me from a personal and professional perspective? So let's start off with personal. So personally, COVID, I think, was a very challenging time for everybody. You know, you had a situation where pretty much over a period of, let's say, 2 months, you went from a fully functioning society where you would go outside, go to events in person, meet with friends and family, go to, go see your doctor, whatever, in a very quick and easy manner, to whole states being locked down, whole countries being locked down, supply chains being disrupted, you name it, it was out there. Um, I would say, from a personal level, um, COVID had really a lot of, I would say, unforeseen effects on people and their families. Some of that was related to, people who were stuck in the home. They had to deal with things in their house that they, may have been putting away because they were working. There were certain situations where I could tell you personally where there's some family members I don't even talk to anymore due to the way the political atmosphere was. I've tried my best to reconcile with that, and in some situations, I feel like COVID brought out the worst in certain
Gave
individuals.
us so much time to dig up the dirt.
That's right. Well, you think about it, everybody was out. They may have had like some thoughts about certain things, but they were out. Everybody was busy. They were doing the best they could. They were spending time with people on a regular basis. And then all of a sudden you have this massive disruption to where they're at home. And then now they're on their computers and their tablets all the time. And there's not as much social interaction. So some of the things that they would or wouldn't say to somebody in person, they can type it, and sometimes it's anonymous. And
And
then
most times they are intoxicated too, because there was no limit to when you start drinking.
yeah, exactly. So I thought that was, from a personal level, that was a real struggle for me, just to kind of seeing some of the things that went along with that. um Overall, though, there was still some positives that came from it as well. There were some things around the house that I was able to accomplish that I frankly didn't have the time to do, before. And it also allowed me to really kind of hone in on some of my professional skills as well. So because a lot of the technologies were maturing. So from a professional perspective, really what happened there, I worked from home. I've been working from home now for, geez, I think like 8 years now. And I was very, very comfortable with remote work. And um, professionally, I actually think COVID benefited me because a lot of the stuff that I was doing and a lot of the programs and things that I was using was not mainstream at the time. But as more of companies started working remotely, a lot of the tools there was a lot of tools that I was using that became adopted, so it was easier for me to meet with other companies and individuals. There was new tools that were created that I helped to automate certain tasks that took a very long time to do before. And coming from financial services, so my background was in mortgage when I
Mhm.
was during COVID. Um, there was quite a bit of money to be made during that time period. So even financially, it obviously did help me from that. Um, During COVID, I did purchase a home. I actually moved to Missouri at the time. That was an interesting move to say the least. So you take your family, you pack them all up, and then you drive to Missouri and you buy a house, right? And we moved there because my wife's sister moved out
Mm.
there. And we went out there, we loved the general area. And I would say some of the challenges of it though initially was number one, trying to buy a home in another state. is very challenging because you don't know the area, you don't know the school districts, you don't know that many people in the general vicinity. So you're kind of just like going there with you and your family, and you gotta learn it. But we got an excellent realtor. And I actually recommend I've bought homes twice now, one without a realtor and one with a realtor. You definitely should buy a home with a realtor. I just think it's easier for you, especially if you're going out of state, because they know the areas better than
Yep.
you ever would. Um, some of the things that I would say I learned from purchasing a home. Number one, if you're ever purchasing a home, I would definitely recommend that you have anywhere between five to $10,000 in the bank, on the side, not including your down payment for things like things that you're going to buy for that house. So like as an example, especially when you buy your first home, you don't realize you get in there, you're like, oh shoot, I need trash cans for every room. I
The
need a
the
lawnmower.
expenses just, yeah,
That's
skyrocket.
right. That's right. And a lot of people, I've seen this mistake made. I personally didn't make this mistake, but I've seen this made over and over again. A lot of people, they will buy their house at more of like the upper limit of what they can afford. They use all their money from a down payment to pay for it. And then they get into it and they're like, oh, shoot, I don't have any money to pay for paint. I want to paint a room. I need, there are certain tools and materials that I need. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people make that mistake when,
Sometimes
they,
it's basic, right? Like they've bought $1 million homes and they're like, I didn't know heating would be this much. Well, there's
oh yeah,
heating, there's water, there's lighting, there's like a
that's
lot of
right.
things. And then
Hmm.
you're like cutting corners on what kind of bulbs you use or what kind of
That's
filters you
right.
use. I'm like, you have a massive air conditioner. You can't put a cheap filter now. Like,
Yep. Yep. It's funny because when you're buying a house, a lot of people kind of get caught up in the moment. They get shown a house and they're like, wow, this house is great, and sometimes the buying decision is made in only a
impulsive.
couple
Yeah.
days. Yeah. And that's kind of been exacerbated a little bit during COVID, where, a lot of homes were going up for sale and they sometimes they would have contracts signed within 24, 48
Hours.
hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on the market you're in, sometimes they don't even go up for sale. The realtor knows somebody who's buying, and that house is sold before it even hits the market. Um, which I think now a lot of people are, or at least a certain subset of the population that moved during COVID, I think they're now recognizing like, oh shoot, I rushed myself into buying this house. And some people are fortunate enough to be able to get out and do what they need to do. Others are stuck in their homes because they had to
Yeah.
make a very quick decision because of the way that the market was oriented.
Yeah,
So,
waiting to see what the next 2, 3 years look like. At least in our area, Charlotte was top. Like they were getting sold in 3, 4 hours.
oh
And
gosh,
now, with whole get back to work show, they're all on the street trying to get to their job. And I'm like, this is why the traffic's crazy here. You bought
that's
homes
right.
in the outskirts,
Mm.
and now you're blocking the streets. But
Well,
yep,
well, like, when you look at some of the bigger cities like Charlotte and Los Angeles, I feel like the city planners, they allow people to build, but they don't think about what the road should be designed as or the freeway should be designed as.
yep,
So nobody sits down and says, well, it's great that you're going to build 500 homes in this general area over here or whatever that number may be, but like, can our schools handle that? Can the roads handle that? Like, nobody holistically really seems to be paying much attention. They just constantly grow
keep
without,
building. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, without thinking about it from a, organizational perspective.
The one other thing we are seeing a lot in Charlotte area, which I didn't think ever would happen, is more homes in a smaller land. Like
Oh yeah.
it's very difficult to get homes with a good yard space anymore. I mean, they're
Yeah.
extravagantly expensive because more and more homes are coming in with like 1 acre, put in 5 homes. I'm like, why are you putting in and cutting off the cul-de-sac? Oh, there's a cul-de-sac, put in a home there. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. I
how
mean,
do you put a home right there? I'm like,
there'll literally be like a corner on the side of the road, like that looks like that'll fit a condo, or
yes, they
a
they will
townhome or
put
something.
it
It's
something.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been like the experiences. So, well,
Yeah.
all right.
All right. So I got one last question for you. So if you could go back in time when you are in the process of starting your business, what are three bits of information that you would provide to yourself? that you think would be helpful?
Okay. I came in so blind into starting business. Sometimes I've told my close connections, like, I was certain I'll shut it down in the first year and then go back. Like, it was like, I'm going to take up this challenge, watch myself fail, get a lesson, and just go back to my full-time job. What
Mhm.
didn't happen is we didn't shut down, and here we are 7 years and going.
Yep.
um, if I had the opportunity to start it back, and from the lessons that I've learned or the things that I lacked that I've learned over the time is network. The first important thing was network.
Oh,
When
yeah.
I started, we didn't know each other. I didn't know anyone at LeadsCon. Now every face is like, I don't want to see you. Like, yeah. It's a
Yeah,
different face
exactly.
now. Like, I don't.
Yeah. Yep.
So my network was probably like 400 people that I've worked with in my previous jobs and
Mhm.
current job, right? So I started without any network. So I didn't have like a mentor, or if what are payrolls? Like, why do I anything
Right.
and nothing. So I knew nothing about it. I knew in my brain and my team's efforts that we could build a good, reasonably good product that
Mhm.
made sense, but we didn't know how to get it out there. Like, no one's going to buy a product if they don't know you. So just so many things, right? So
How
first
to
first
market it.
how to market it, what kinds of words to use, do we use middle people that know other people and go through that chain? Do we raise money and flood in ads? Like, nothing
Mhm.
around it. There are so many ways. And one thing I've learned is not all ways are right for you. Um, Certain ways are right for you. And the worst thing you can do is pick a path that you don't feel comfortable about and be stuck with it. So that
Mhm.
gladly didn't haven't done those things. But yeah, the second point I would say is, I lost my train of thought, but yes, sell before you build. Being
I
from a
like to say.
technology and product background, it always came as you've got to build it. Again, sometimes you definitely have to build it to be ahead of the market and show how you compare
Mhm.
differently. But
Right.
in building a product is absolutely 100% on a different pendulum and spectrum than running business. They never come together. You think they would come together. The
Mhm.
strategies to build a product are entirely inverse of a strategies to run a business. And that learning came over time, because you're like, if I've got the best products, it's going to sell itself. I'm like, that doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
Building business is completely different from building product. So I think getting to the point that this contract will get signed or this sale will happen, and these are the things that will encompass with that sale, was a learning, rather than thinking, let's build more. If we have 100 things, somebody will sign the contract faster. They might not need
Mhm.
those 100 things. They might need the one thing you don't have, and then it's like, let's build 101 thing. No, that cycle never ends. So I think getting the story right and making that sale happen before, like, positioning your
Right.
platform and features, that was like the second lesson. Like, just understanding how to tell your story. Why is the product useful to you? Why was it built?
That's right.
that
S
that took some that took a lot of time. And
so
yeah.
solving the business need, right,
Yes,
for it,
speaking the
right?
business language and not the
Yeah.
product and technology language, that took a pretty long time. um and then the third thing I would say is being slow at hiring, which we did fairly fine. But again, there were times when we were like, we have the funds, let's just go hire. Oh, you're right. Like,
Mhm.
don't ever feel strained with how many interviews you have to do to get the right person. I think sometimes it's like, just making time to interview candidates it creates fatigue, but you don't
Mhm.
want to get the mismatch candidate or the wrong candidate. So yeah, I think those three things, I'm better prepared now than when I just jumped in and
Right.
I said, I have some savings, I'm starting business, Monday morning I'll show up
Yep.
and call
Yep.
myself the founder. So yes, I am far much better prepared with experiences and lessons learned.
Yeah, and it's interesting for your second point. When you go through, you sell a client on your product, and sometimes part of that sale is that you have to build features for them, so like you will build that feature, but often I found, depending on the customer, not all situations are like this, that adding on that feature allows you to cross sell that
Yes,
feature potentially to other clients, which can, generate revenue that you may not have even thought about in the beginning, but you're like, oh yeah, I
this
could
makes sense.
productize that. Yeah, I could productize that and standardize it across the different verticals in order to generate more revenue. So I've
Yeah,
definitely
client
seen that.
feedback is so important, right? And
Yeah.
also understanding that not all clients speak like the God language. Like you might bring
Mhm.
in a feature which only applies to you. So having that understanding of like, oh, I could, but you're paying for this versus I will build this, but this is the timeline it'll happen because I need
That's
to
right.
take this idea and hit it with my other clients to see the adoption. So
That's exactly right. Yeah, the clients can vary, and also in my experience, clients can vary in how technical they are in nature too. So like you may have somebody who is a small business owner where, they're trying just to keep the house, operational. They need to put something on their site. They know how to do it, but they don't know APIs or anything of that nature, right? And but then you have the other side of the fence, which is, enterprise level clients. They may have an IT team, or the administrator of the software is very technical in nature and they can do some cool things with your platform. It really just adds an interesting dynamic, I think, and I'm sure you've experienced this um, with your different customers.
yeah, and one other thing, and you might have being on the lender side vetting vendors and then being on the software side selling to clients may have experienced many times clients do pick the wrong vendor and they remember you after it's too late, and
Yep.
they are the ones they're like, you've got to concession on the price because my budget's blown up with the wrong vendor, and you're like, I
Yeah.
have no penny and you want a discount on the penny I don't already have
That's
because
right.
you blew up your budget somewhere else. Like, yeah,
Well,
it's
yeah, to your point, it's a, gosh, I've seen this happen time and time again. I mean, especially in the CRM space where clients they'll see like one flashy object when they're given a demo of a CRM, and they don't think about the holistic picture of like, you know, what are these things? What does it do within that CRM system? And so they end up buying that product, and then they realize they get into it. They're like, oh shoot, I need to be able to do this, this, and this, and this doesn't even, sometimes it doesn't even have that feature. Or it's, um, missold to them. So like basically
yeah.
it's they say that it does this, but it doesn't actually do what you tell them to do. So like what I
And
always
most
tell.
times
Yeah.
people don't bring the end users. Like the executives are
Yes,
signing up the contracts. They are not using it every day.
that's
Like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
they are being sold a AI script and demo that doesn't exist.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. All
All
right.
right. This has been fun. Any takeaway, any points, anything that come to your mind that you'd want to share?
Oh man. Um, if I were to say if there's something that I would like to share, Aru, you've noticed that you obviously noticed I've been more active on LinkedIn. From a business development perspective, if you have a lot of good information about your vertical or what your product does, um, from a business development perspective, I think it's actually very, very good to post that stuff on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok. Use those as kind of like your as like a lead generation tool. But also, you get some really, really good connections. So over even we'll say like the last 30 days, I've established connections with people that I had never even met before, but because they'd seen my posts, I met with them. I've already developed some great business relationships. So that would be my point to take away from that.
Thank you so much. And cannot protest on that, right? Because sometimes I do question, did I have to post that? But the content out there, the shelf life is so short. Don't
That's
even
right.
bother if you put something out there. I think what should worry you is someone incompetent or not so hardworking as you posting something and taking away all the limelight while you're waiting there wondering,
That's right.
where did I lose? So yeah, thanks so much
Yeah.
for that reminder. So that's a new world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had posts that I was like, this one's going to definitely do well. Nah,
Oh,
didn't do any. No,
that viral moment,
no
right?
engagement whatsoever. You're like, oh boy, here we go, sort of thing. At least from a person, I've obviously done like stuff with social media with companies, but from a personal perspective, it's just been interesting for me to share some of my insights and even getting some of the responses. There's been things I'm like, oh, I didn't really think about that. And, it just helped me to learn and also helped me from a business development perspective. So,
And as you're saying this, I'm going back to your 30-day challenge. I think even though it's social media, algorithms, computers, good and bad crap, in the end, even that requires consistency. So if there's
yes,
consistency, you're seeing that growth. If you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm showing up once a month or once a year or once a week and just doing something, I guess if
that's right.
we are going towards artificial intelligence with hope that we'll train it to be a human, and
Right.
those algorithms needs consistency too. So
That's right.
it's interesting. So okay.
Yeah.
Mike,
All
this has
right.
been fun. Thank you so much for this episode, and I'll be looking forward to sharing this with all. Thanks so much.
All right, Rue, you have a good one. Okay.
Thank you.